Right now, you own almost nothing, but three companies you have never heard of own almost everything. The phone in your hand, the coffee in your cup, the two rival brands you swear are fighting for your money. Same owners. The bank that holds your paycheck, the airline that overcharged you, the app quietly tracking you right now. Follow the ownership all the way up, and you keep slamming into the exact same three names. You never voted for them. You will never see them in a single ad. Most people cannot name even one of them, and yet they sit as the largest single owner of corporate America, quietly, legally, and almost completely unnoticed. So today, I'll show you who really owns the world, how they pulled it off using your own money, and the one quiet move that hands them more power every single time you get paid. Let's start with the names: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Say them out loud. Go on. Nothing, right? No jingle, no logo you would recognize, no store you've ever walked into. They don't sell you anything. They don't want your attention. And that is exactly the whole point. BlackRock alone manages more than $11 trillion. Vanguard, around $10 trillion. State Street, another 4. Together, this quiet little trio, people call them the Big Three, controls north of $25 trillion. That number is so huge, it stops meaning anything. So let me put it in real scale. It is more money than the entire economies of Japan, Germany, and Britain combined. 3 companies, one pile of money bigger than almost every nation on Earth. And they built it all without you ever once noticing. So how do 3 companies nobody ever talks about end up owning everything? Here's the trick, and you are probably already part of it. Meet a totally regular guy. Call him Sam. Sam doesn't play the stock market at all. He thinks investing is only for rich people. But Sam has a 401k at work, like almost everyone does. Every payday, a slice of his check quietly vanishes into it, automatically. Sam never picks a single stock. Years ago, he ticked one box labeled index fund and forgot about it. And that index fund does something quietly clever. Instead of betting on one company, it buys a tiny crumb of all 500 of America's biggest companies at once. Safe, simple, boring. Exactly what he was always told to do. But here is what Sam never realized. He didn't buy those 500 companies. He handed his money to the company that runs the fund and let them go buy for him. Now multiply Sam by 100 million other people, 100 million paychecks every 2 weeks, all pouring into the same tiny handful of funds. And the companies holding those funds quietly become the biggest shareholder in almost every single business in the entire country. And this was not always how money worked. For most of history, investing meant a person carefully picking the winners. Then, back in 1976, a man named Jack Bogle built the very first index fund. Buy everything and do nothing. Wall Street openly laughed at him. They called it un-American, a guaranteed way to just stay average. Today, that boring little idea is the single biggest force in the entire market. More money now sits in these do-nothing funds than with all the stock pickers combined. And every dollar that floods in flows straight to the very top, to the same 3 companies we just met. So how big does this actually get? Take America's 500 largest companies. The Big Three are the single biggest shareholder in roughly 9 out of every 10 of them. 9 out of 10. The bank you use, the airline you fly, the soda you drink, and the rival soda you don't. Same top owner. It looks exactly like a conspiracy. It isn't. It's just an index fund. And now the twist that most people completely miss. The twist that makes this whole thing genius. That $25 trillion. Almost none of it is actually theirs. It's yours. It's Sam's 401k. It's your neighbor's pension. It's the retirement money of millions of ordinary people, all pooled together and handed over for them to manage. So do they really own everything? Technically, no. And that, right there, is the single most important sentence in this entire story. Because owning and controlling are 2 completely different things. When Sam bought that index fund, he handed over far more than just his money. Attached to every share is a vote, a real say in how that company gets run, who sits on the board, who gets to be the boss, which direction the whole company sails. And Sam gave every one of those votes away without ever reading the fine print. He kept all the risk. They kept the voice. So when a giant company holds its yearly vote, it isn't 100 million small investors speaking up. It's 3 firms voting the shares of all those people as one enormous block. And with that block, they can push a CEO out, block a merger, force a company to change its whole course. Picture a business with 100 million owners, and one single hand raised at the meeting, speaking for most of them. That hand belongs to the big 3, so you own the money, and they own the microphone. Now here is where it gets genuinely strange. Think about almost any single industry. The airlines. 4 of them fly nearly everyone in America. They are supposed to be at war, fighting for you with lower prices. But look at who actually owns them. The very same 3 names sit at the top of all 4. So ask yourself one quiet little question. If you owned big chunks of every airline, would you really want them in a brutal price war, crushing each other's profits? Or would you rather they all stay calm, keep prices comfortable, and keep the money flowing? Economists have a name for this: common ownership, and they've argued it quietly nudges prices up across whole industries, from airlines to banks. Nobody has to cheat. Nobody makes a single phone call. When the same owners sit above every player, competition just gets a little less fierce, all on its own. But money is only half of their power. The other half is something almost nobody outside of finance has ever even heard of. It's called Aladdin. Not a person, a piece of software built by BlackRock. Think of it as the brain that watches over the money. It tracks the risk on more than $20 trillion of assets. And not just BlackRock's own. Money belonging to banks, insurers, even rival firms and governments, who all pay to plug themselves right in. Aladdin sees the storms coming before most humans ever do. It whispers what to buy, what to dump, and what to fear. So a huge slice of the entire financial world is quietly steering by the very same set of eyes. One company doesn't just own the biggest stakes, it also runs the software everyone else uses just to see. And at the very top of all of it sits one man most people couldn't pick out of a crowd: Larry Fink. He started BlackRock in a single small office back in 1988 and turned it into the most powerful financial force on the entire planet. When the economy nearly collapsed in 2008, who did the government call to help clean up the wreckage? BlackRock. When the markets froze again in 2020, who did they hire to step in? BlackRock. Once again, Fink's calendar reads like a world leader's: presidents, prime ministers, central bankers. He was never once elected to anything. He just quietly became the man every government keeps on speed dial. So let me lay all the receipts on the table at once. $25 trillion under 3 quiet roofs. The biggest shareholder in 9 of every 10 major American companies. The votes of 100 million people, all held by a handful of hands. A software brain watching over $20 trillion more. And a man on speed dial for the most powerful governments on Earth. And none of this is even hidden. It is all completely public. It's just wrapped in words so boring. Asset manager, index fund, fiduciary, that your eyes slide right off it. And that is the real trick. The most powerful empire in the world doesn't hide in the shadows. It hides right there in the fine print. So, should you actually be scared? Here's the honest answer, and it's the whole reason I told you any of this. They are not cartoon villains plotting in a dark room. They got this powerful by doing something almost boringly simple: pooling ordinary people's money and buying a small piece of everything. And that is exactly the lesson they never say out loud. Because the very same tool that made them the most powerful force in finance is sitting right there, wide open, for you. When Sam buys that same index fund, he becomes a tiny owner of 500 companies too. A crumb, sure, but a completely real one. The difference between Sam and the big 3 was never the secret. It is only the size. They just did it with millions of people's money instead of one. So stop being only a customer of the world. Every dollar you spend makes them richer. Every dollar you invest makes you an owner right beside them. You will never own everything, but you can finally own a piece and stop being the money that quietly makes someone else the most powerful person in the room.